Hello and welcome to More Than a Lumpy Jumper. We're shaking things up with something a little bit different. You might notice it's just me, flying solo. So where's Bridge? Well, we have decided to take this recording lark in turns during our season break as we dive into a new and exciting segment from the in-between seasons bit. We're turning the spotlight, or the microphone at least, onto some of our incredible listeners. That's right. Instead of our usual content, we're bringing in actual listeners as guests. It's a new form of gift for all of us, getting to know the voices behind the earbuds. And so without further ado, let's welcome two brave souls to More Than a Lumpy Jumper Guest Gifts. Get ready for some fun and real talk. Oh, ladies. I don't even know where to start with the fact that you have been so wonderful to agree and come and do this little guest sesh with me. It has only taken about, 3 months in order to allow for all of us to be able to record at the same time. It's not 3 months. It's been a few days and a few hill starts, but we are now here. And so I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Gina and Ella. And that's all I'm going to tell you about them, because as in one of our sessions where we said not just a job title, I have given Gina and Ella the challenge of introducing themselves and who they really are, not what they do. So picked from a cast of thousands, Gina, I'm going to ask you to go first.
I found this one really, really hard, so without it seeming cheesy. So who am I? So I'm Gina, and I'm a dog mum, a mother. I love massages. I'm spontaneous. And who am I? I'm Bobby's mentor. That's my summary.
That's very good. So you're my mentor now, are you? That's good.
Gosh, we definitely need that. Do you know we definitely need that glass of wine?
Actually, all joking aside, I do feel sometimes like you are mentoring me. I know it's meant to be mentee, mentor, but as I think I said in my blog post, I am a firm believer that it's always two-way. So
totally.
So if you want to be my mentor, you can be. It's fine.
I'll take that and run for it. So that's me. I am Bobby's mentor.
There we are. We have it. It's a new relationship that we've got going on, but that's all marvellous. And Ella, how would you like to introduce yourself to us?
So I went the cheesy route. And so my intro to myself is that I'm passionate about making positive change, whether that's in my local community or in the world of work. I also come from a particularly neurospicy family. So I am passionate about creating spaces where everyone can thrive across the community. Fantastic.
And we've definitely needed to try and thrive by getting this recording underway. So I'm so glad that you are here too. So let's just canter straight on. Ella, you can go first now then, in terms of what made you start listening to More Than a Lumpy Jumper?
So I started listening because, well, Bobby, I knew you through the HR Geek Squad, and that was how I first came about the podcast. And so I listened to the first episode, and I thought it was amazing that it's such an authentic way of doing leadership, because there's so much out there on the topic that's aspirational and really high level thinking, which is great. But you often come away with thinking, okay, how do I actually do that? Like, what do I need to do to get there? And I found with this podcast that you both give those tips and the practical, tangible things that you need to do to go away and become a great leader, to create your own roadmap. And I think that that's a massive gap in the market in terms of leadership.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Gina, how about you?
I am always on the look out for a new podcast. Doing the commute into London all the time, there's always something that I want to be listening to. And I think it's only been in the last 8-9 months I've realised what I like listening to. And it's not always the topics. I actually think I buy into who is delivering the podcast, when there's some challenge. And I definitely get that from this podcast. And it's complemented by some really cool topics as well. So I think the mix of both keeps me drawn in.
So on that basis, Gina, do you have a favourite episode that you've listened to?
I actually have two, possibly three. So there's two little ones, which one of them was when you were talking about approaching a sports person, a football person, and there was just a really, really funny moment in that just made me absolutely like spit my coffee out as I was listening to it. And I'm trying to remember which one it was, but you were
I can remember which one it was because you messaged me straight afterwards and said, Brian Pele, I spat my coffee everywhere, but I can't remember what the actual episode was.
That one made me giggle. That was just a humorous moment. But I really found interesting the one about your face and the fact that sometimes your face can do a lot of the talking and controlling your face. And the most interesting part of that one was the science that you brought to the topic behind it. A bit naive, didn't think there was that much science behind it. So I found that one interesting. But my absolute favourite episode was the one about being a fraud, mainly because I am one. No, I struggle with the concept of imposter syndrome. So I found it really great that you were talking about it. And sometimes when I listen to podcasts, actually the fact that I don't agree is quite exciting for me as well. But I did agree in principle with what you were saying. I often feel that the words imposter syndrome is labelled a female issue, and I think you brought that to the table.
Yeah.
In reality, I think it's all just about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And when you step outside your comfort zone, you're in a space of stretch and challenge. And that feeling's uncomfortable to all. I just think women talk about it more openly and men don't speak as much. And I think that's evident when you kind of look at the men's mental health stats and things like that. I just think women are more open with their feelings. And that gives them the label.
Yeah, I hear you. Interestingly, there are a couple of my male friends after that episode, because we had tackled it in a way about how much it gets labelled towards women and it's something that's been conjured up. And I think we were saying in the research that when the research first started back in the 50s, in fact, they were only researching women, which is where that's all stemmed from. And yet these two male friends were saying to me, it's not just a female thing. I have it day in, day out. I'm living with it, tackling it, trying to work out how to not have it engulf me on a daily basis. So I think you're right. I think it is something that is flawed, but I don't think Bridget would necessarily agree that it's but you know, this is my recording, although she's here having to try and hold my hand because I'm so bloody awful about the technology. But anyway, we keep going back there. We won't. But yeah, it was a great episode, but I also enjoyed it because Bridget and I weren't entirely in agreement, but I love that for the podcast as well, that we can have very different views and then we all bring it back together again. So thank you for bringing that one to the table. Ella, how about you? What's your favourite?
My favourite for me is Stop Saying Sorry. Because it resonated so deeply with me, both professionally and personally. So every comment that you guys were making on it, I was like, yep, that's me. Yep, I do that. So I think I often feel like I'm winging it, and that's because I am. But my biggest life lesson that I've learned recently is that generally everybody's winging it, and that's a normal feeling to have. But what you shouldn't do is apologise for it. So when I reflected, I was saying sorry to like cover my back in case I got something wrong. But when in reality, that just made me look like I didn't know what I was doing. And so it was like a double-edged sword that, yes, it made me feel better at the time, but in the long run, it was probably doing more harm than good. But on the other side of that, personally, I am a person that uses sorry as a not-so-subtle passive-aggressive statement. Which isn't good, because all it does is put a plaster on something and just prolongs the issue even longer. And again, what I also do is I'll say sorry to smooth social tension rather than dealing with the problem, because most of the time I'm just too tired. I think this was highlighted for me recently this is when I realised that I say sorry far too much when I shouldn't be, is when I'm in a busy place and someone will barge into me, like by accident or on purpose, whatever it might be, and I'll automatically go, oh, sorry, and then they'll turn back and give me a filthy look like I was the one that bumped into them. And one day I was like, hang on a minute, I haven't done anything here. Why am I saying sorry? And why are you giving me a filthy look? So that really was like the light bulb moment of I say sorry far too much. And so when I was listening to this podcast, it's on the train home, it was like a massive light bulb moment throughout the full 15 minutes of like, wow, you are basically describing me.
I love that. I don't know if this resonates for both of you, but there's a number of people who listen to it who categorically believe that we have created recordings specifically for them.
Amazing.
But I think that that's a great thing. If you can be listening to any of the episodes and go, yep, there I am. And I think both of you are pointing to that there are particular episodes where you are right there in it with us. A number of topics where you've gone, oh yeah, there I am, right in the midst of the recording. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree. And thinking back to the podcast around your face doing sort of all the talking and the expressions, I think that was one of the ones where, as I was listening to it, I was pulling funny faces. And I was pulling those faces going, oh yeah, maybe people do see this. And when I think, do I look to the top left and all of those things? So for sure, when I'm listening to all of them, there's an element where you can kind of go, is that a bit of me? And you know what, if it's not, you can sometimes hear that in somebody else almost.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Ella, you've definitely pointed to that with the sorry piece. I just wonder, as a result of those two things, whether there's any learning or a new practice that you've actually decided to take up, you know, Ella, for yourself, to trying to stop yourself from saying sorry too often, or Gina, to being aware about face pulling or whatever. Ella, how about you first?
I think the biggest learning and takeaway for me is that I like to ask a lot of questions. I like to be clear of the expectations of me, like the what, why, and how, like verbal instructions I really like. So I often ask a lot of questions to follow up on stuff. But I find myself apologising for asking those questions. And this was something that you addressed directly in the podcast. And it was, you shouldn't be apologising. Instead, what I understand is, and ask for clarification. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking those questions. And in my professional life on the other side, that I often get people going, oh, I'm really sorry to ask this, or I'm really sorry for all the questions I'm asking. And my response is, please always ask questions. Like, I'd rather you ask questions than sat there and you didn't know. So I need to share that understanding with myself and not keep apologising for asking questions.
Cracking. Gina, how about for yourself? Any face pulling training?
I was in a meeting the other day and I'd not long listened to that podcast. I think I'd listened to it that morning and landed myself in like a monthly management meeting. And we all sat around the table, and at the end, I thought about everybody's faces that they were pulling. And I went to one of the team and said, hey, your poker face is nearly as shocking as mine. And I think and they went, really? Was I that transparent? And then I replicated her face, and we just giggled, because it's just so funny that when you become aware of some of those faces and you're looking for it, you can almost read the room without anybody actually speaking or saying anything. And then that almost led me to make her my accountability partner, because I said to her, hey, like, I'm reading your face. I know exactly what you were thinking at that point. I need someone to call me out to and give me a subtle, I don't know, nudge to let me know when it's happening. And it helped sort of cement a bit of a bond between us. But also alongside that, I think it's just allowing someone to hold me accountable when my face does the talking.
Brilliant. I love that. I think the other thing, because being the mischievous creature that I am, you know, the other way, if there's not sort of like a movement or a pen being held up to give them a warning, is to come up with some really random word like wallaby that you've got to get into the sentence so that they know that there's something wrong with their face. But that would just be me being ridiculous. So that's good. So, ladies, what haven't we tackled that you could really do with us digging into?
I would love, and it's really interesting because we kind of started with this, but it's down as one of the things I'd love to explore. So I'd love to explore an episode on how neurodiversity is living and breathing in the workplace and how to nurture it. I think it'd be a really interesting topic to explore. And alongside that, maybe a discussion around how to build a portfolio career. I think it'd be really interesting. And I think that lots of people are in their stages of their careers where they don't quite know what they want to do on their next jump or hurdle. And sometimes figuring what that is and being really selfish about it could be quite cool. And I know, Bobby, you've kind of been on that journey. So I think you'd have a lot of experience that you could share with people.
I have indeed. I love both of those topics. I do indeed. And I think I might have found myself a couple of guests that might be good to actually come and explore that with us. But we will talk about that later. Ella, how about you? What else would you like us to tackle?
For me, and it's something that I've been dealing with myself and I've been helping other people with as well, but that as a leader or in a position of leadership, that you're not responsible for fixing everything. You can so easily fall into the trap of like scooping everything up in your arms and, you're determined to make it better and make it all work, when in reality, that's just not possible. But especially it's one thing like saying to yourself, like, I can only control what I can control. But in reality, how do you actually get there? And when you do feel like you've dropped the ball, you've missed something, or whether it's a project, a deadline, or whether it's, person specific, how you can bounce back from that and how you deal with that and avoid getting burnt out from trying to fix everything.
Is that, would you say as well that there's a level of rescue in that as well? Because you can see something that's going to go wrong so that you rush in to take control of it, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good skill to have as a leader or as a person, but it's so difficult that sometimes you do need to let things fall for them to be better, but allowing yourself to do that is a real challenge.
I had exactly this conversation in a very different walk of life last night, where people in a team worrying that somebody might leave because they were scooping everything up. And it was this whole business that they were scooping everything up. And I said, sometimes you have to let an egg crack in order for people to see what it is that they're actually meant to be responsible for.
I love that analogy.
But it becomes, people don't want that to happen because they wonder what the impact might be. So you're having the conversation with people about, I'm almost doing the episode here now, but the impact of what the burnout looks like when somebody is trying to fix everything and not letting anything drop. And so every now and again, you have to work out which one it's okay to, just to actually show it up for all that somebody's holding that somebody else should be, or other people should be. I think it's a great topic. So, whilst you thought that was, I think they are all superb. And thank you very much for helping us with further seasons. And it would be lovely to actually be able to speak to the two of you again. This just has not been long enough, but it has been thoroughly amusing with all of the challenges that we've actually had to make it through to almost the end of this little segment. Would you both like to name the three people that you are going to be sharing this with, to almost give them a nudge to be listening if they're not already? Gina?
Yes. I would like to share this with my old long-term pal, Rachel, which I met at work. Another pal called Liz, who is the most curious person I've ever met and would enjoy listening to this. And Sarah, who's one of my ex-bosses, and she was great, and she's now semi-retired and always looking for something to do, and this would keep her busy.
Ella?
I would like to shout out to my friend Sarah, who is an amazing person, who is on an amazing career path, and I think listening to this podcast would be great. I'd also like to shout out Mel. She is my auntie, and she has just started a new job in a new career path and is doubting herself. I know she has the ability and the skills and the capabilities, but she just needs to believe it. And these podcasts will definitely offer that. And thirdly is Matt, who is a self-proclaimed HR maverick who I think would absolutely love these podcasts.
Fabulous. Ladies, thank you so much for agreeing to join me this evening. That has been fab. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our little guest gift episode. Next week, it's back to Bridget's turn to fly solo. She'll be joined by more wonderful listeners to share their favourite episodes, discuss what they're learning, and tell us what they want more of. Until then, have a fantastic week. Why not take a stroll through our archive and rediscover more past episodes? Or don't. There's always a choice. And if you do love what you're hearing, please vote for us in the British Podcast Awards. Till next week. Bye.